Well, it actually leads to a really good question, because both of you have been exposed to and been mentored by some of the greatest coaches in the game today. Um, but how does their approach between Coach Elliott and Sullivan differ from the likes of Marv Dunphy, Karch Karai, John Cook, and so forth? So we'll jump over to Jordan on this one first, and then to Dave.
Oh goodness. Again, I think from like a coaching standpoint, I don't know if I have enough maybe time in the game with Jarrett and Eric. I was only there for a short period of time. So I think it's really hard for me to judge, but I think kind of what David had just touched on about people, and I mean, and all those people that you mentioned, that's kind of first and foremost their priority. And obviously they've worked really hard to get where they are. And they all have, wonderful qualities that have gotten them there. So I thought David encapsulated a lot of that, but he would probably have more experience as far as like the coaching side.
Oh, there you go. The toss off.
Yeah, great. I mean, I've only been in the gym. I mean, we haven't coached a team together. We've coached camps together. So I really only know from our conversations outside the gym. Obviously, once you get in the gym, it's how you interact with the athletes, whatever. But I think what's interesting for me, and this is more of like a coaching philosophical thing, there's no one magic way to do something. If there was, somebody would figure it out, and then we'd all copy them, and then we would all be doing it, right? So there's no magic pill. There's no one magic system. Oh, if you run, your quick attack at this tempo, then you're gonna, hit 900. Like, there's just not. So specifically with Marv and Karch, right? Like, they're great with people, and they put the athlete first. I think that's what's really got to be stressed, is the athlete is first, and what's best for the athlete. Then it seems like they take what that individual, and then it's, hey, we have our core values, right? Here's what goes and doesn't go with the team. If you don't do those things, like, you're just not a part of this group. So there are, here's what we value as a group. And then this person fits that in terms of what we value, but everybody brings this unique piece, right? And we want unique pieces and diversity to be on our team, right? And then how do we maximize those? And then how do we take all those individual pieces and make them this collection of a team? I think we've all seen really talented teams go nowhere. And we've all seen, these teams that don't have very much talent in our eyes, right, sort of overachieve, right? So what is it that does those things? And I think the great coaches can take the individual, get them to buy into the team concept or whatever they have to do for the team to be successful, and then sort of mold those things. So the conversations that we're having as a staff have been awesome. I think everybody philosophically is aligned in terms of how we want to play and how we see the game. Obviously, that comes from just watching a lot of volleyball and seeing it at a really high level, and then how we want to treat people, right? So we're in alignment there. And when we've been in the gym together, it's been a lot of fun and a lot of laughs. And I think the athletes we've worked with have gotten better and enjoyed it. So we're pretty excited.
Well, next question is actually a great segue. It's either from a diehard Texas fan or a Nebraska fan looking for intel, but it's how good will this Texas team be this year? And it was strengths and weaknesses was the follow-up on the end of that. So I'll let you guys answer as you feel appropriate. But I thought it was a funny question. I'm thinking, what's this guy's handle? Is it Texas fan or?
Jordan's been in the gym with them, so she'd probably know a little bit better than me.
No, I was gonna throw it over to you. I think that I think obviously they've done a great job so far, and I think we've added a couple pieces that I do think that will add value, and I think we're culturally like on the right path, and I'm just excited to see us all kind of get in the gym all at once, right? I was kind of working more individual basis, but I think that from the outside looking in, it seems like we do have those pieces to be a very successful team, but I do think that we have a lot to learn about ourselves, and we have a lot to get better at. And so I think it's tough to say right now because we haven't really all been together, but I think we do have really some special pieces. And I think like David said, I think you can have all this talent in the world, but if you can't make it work, and you can't learn how to be selfless and having the team first and foremost, like if you can't have that coming from that perspective, I think it makes it really tough. And so I do think that we have a lot of pieces talently, but how can we, I don't even, talently is the word? No, definitely.
Yeah,
not.
pieces talently. Yeah, no, that was good.
Sorry,
That was good.
pieces too that have talent. There we go.
Bigly too is another word.
So I do think we have that. It's just, can we all come together? And I do think this off season has allowed kind of people to get to know each other. And it makes me, obviously being a pro for so long, I miss the off season, right? Like there's so much room for growth and vulnerability and time to invest. And I miss those times of being able to really dive in and get to know one another. And I think that we have really good athletes, but first and foremost people. And I know they've taken this time and used it wisely. So I'm excited to get back in the gym and kind of see how we can make this all come together.
Cool. Dave, take a stab.
Yeah. So for Rob, you know me. I mean, we've done those podcasts. I will not shy away from what I think.
Yeah, this person played terribly.
Yeah, I mean, no, I do. So here's the deal. Yeah, I do think it's important to be honest, but I think you can have some tact as well as a coach. So a lot of times when I hear coaches, or even like in the office, right? Oh, I was just being honest. No, you were sort of just being a jerk, right? Like you were blowing off steam. You can be honest and have a direct conversation without making somebody feel like crap, right? Like there's a very sharp difference there. Now, it doesn't mean that when we're having a direct conversation that it's always comfortable, but you can have a direct conversation and still empower somebody to let them know that you're in it with them. You're going to help them as the best as you can, but this is the current reality or the situation as we see it. We're going to have some challenges, and it's not dissimilar from what we experienced at Pepperdine. You got transfers. You have transfers that are expected to carry a load. Which transfers those are, I don't know, right? I don't know what the current girls did in the spring, but I know that as Jordan alluded to, this off season and this time when the coaches aren't with them really dictates a lot of their success. So I think that's going to be a key element that we don't really know. I think we're going to have to clean up first and second contacts, right? Like when I look at the elite teams in NCAA volleyball, or the teams that have won over the past few years, there's a clear line of, can we eliminate these dead ball situations? And these dead ball situations would be times that we get ace, times that we overpass or have to give a free ball over, right? So when we have possession of the ball, can we get a swing? It does us no good to have some pieces that are super physical and can kill the ball if we never have an opportunity to kill the ball, or if we hurt our chances to kill the ball. I think we're going to have to evaluate how many times the ball is in play, right? So like that's a combination of service errors and reception errors, right? So like when the ball is in play, how good is our volleyball? I don't know. Nobody knows that right now. Nobody's played yet, but can we maximize things in there? And just can we continue to teach our athletes to read and see the game at a high level and then execute accordingly, right? Like I think an important piece to remember is they're really skilled athletes that are good volleyball players. They wouldn't be in the gym if they weren't. So let's also empower them to go out there and be great competitors and play with and for each other and do that. Now, because we have them coming from varying backgrounds, that could be potentially a challenge, but it seems like they've worked on that so far in the off season. And then the last one would just be like from a coaching perspective. And this is not only our staff, right? Because now we have 2 new staff members, but more players, as well as just language and how we speak and how we talk about things and how do we address things, and not only skill, but terminology, and when problems arise, like how do we resolve conflict and how do we deal with these things? And it's great when everyone's feeling good and it's the first few days of practice and the vibes are good. It's hard when we're getting into the end of September, beginning of October, and sort of that idea of the dog days. And, we know everything about each other that we want to know and don't want to know. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, God, Eric just eats his banana and it's just so loud. I just want to freaking kill him, and it's just like, whoa, like where'd that come from? So, yeah, just those ideas, and they're not dissimilar from what every other team is trying to talk about and solve. And then there's going to be this critical point where, and I don't know where it is for the women's volleyball in terms of the season, but in men's volleyball, we would get to this critical point where it was about a little after halfway through the season where it was, we know where we want to be, or we know what we want it to look like. Where are we at right now? What's reality telling us? And then where do we need to shift course and continue to get better to peak at the end? So my guess would be it'd be like a quarter of the way through the Big 12 season. But just nobody wins a national championship, the first weekend that we play, right? The last week in August. It's going to be, can we play good volleyball at the end, and can we be our best the last 6 matches of the year?
I'm going to shift over to Jordan on this one. It is a good one-liner for you, but how was it like playing for Monza in Italy these last few months?
Yeah, it was wonderful. Obviously, I've heard wonderful things about Italy. I had only obviously visited there a couple of times, not Monza specifically, but Italy, and never really got the full experience, I guess, because I was always in and out. And yeah, I mean, they just treated me. I mean, it's hard, right? Like a player's coming in with probably 2.5 months left of the season, and they come in and it's like, all right, well, here's the Champions League match. You arrive on Tuesday and Champions League match on Saturday. Like, let's roll, And so it's like, I think the team I'm really grateful. The team embraced me, and the club was uber professional on top of everything, and really just an overall fantastic experience. And I get why people want to play there. The lifestyle is great. And yeah, it was really, really a wonderful experience. I have no complaints. And most of all, the girls were just awesome.
Well, it actually was you triggered another question that was a little farther down on the list there, but someone had asked, would you pursue any other professional opportunities if they came about?
Yeah. They I was lucky enough that they did ask me to come back. But at this time right now, I just don't think it's the right time. But I'm definitely, like I had said early on, that just keeping the door open. You never know where life takes you. And I think if you kind of close that door firmly, like, you just never know what could happen. And so just trying to keep an open mind, one day at a time, and just see where it goes.
All right. Here's a one that I gave you guys a little warning on earlier before we started recording, but if a program was to pursue either of you as a head coach in the future and supportive of a package deal, what kind of situation would you ideally be looking for? My guess is Dave will probably want to jump in first, but
yeah.
Okay, there you go.
No,
that affirmation there.
Yeah, he would know. He would know.
All right. My first thing would be to call Jordan and say, hey, so-and-so called, what do we think? So I'm gonna sort of go to you.
No.
But I think for me it would depend, how does Jordan like coaching, right? Like, Jordan, this is gonna be your first season with a team, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, just check.
You need a confirmation of that?
But what I'm saying is, like, all right, there's a lot of things in coaching that people don't realize in terms of coaching the NCAA that just make it difficult, right? Like, the time that we get with our athletes is actually very, very small. It's a lot of other things. Luckily, the programs are larger athletic departments. You have more resources, so you do get more time invested in your athletes, which is nice. Versus if you have a smaller department where you as a coach have to wear more hats just because your department's a little bit smaller. It tends to take away from the time recruiting and with the athletes. So it's coaching in college. I guess the reason I bring that up is just, it's a lot more than probably people realize, in terms of you have to do more than just show up to practice and roll the balls out and then occasionally contact kids about coming to your school. Yeah, then it would just be sort of where are we at in life, like what's important to us at that moment. And I think coaching for me has been this evolution. It sort of followed this path as I grow as a person. Um, for a long time as a young coach, it was just important to me to go to the Olympic Games. I want to go to the Olympic Games. That was all I thought about, right? I want to coach volleyball at the highest level and go to the Olympics and coach the best athletes in the world. And then when you get to the Olympics, you realize like, damn, the Olympics are only 2 weeks long, but I've only set my sights like towards this one goal. So now what makes me feel fulfilled, and where do I get my enjoyment from? And as I talk to young coaches, and I was like this myself, sometimes coaching fills that competitive drive for a little bit. Okay. So as you get older, as the competitiveness, is still there, right? It's not that we're not competitors, but now what else do we enjoy about coaching? And probably as you get older, it changes. And I'm sure when you have a family, it changes, right? When you become a mom or a father, it changes, and how you view those relationships and how you invest in those relationships. So I think it has to do with where we're at individually and as a family. What have we been able to accomplish at Texas? I think that's a big one. I gave Jarrett my word that we were going to be here and we're going to invest in this program, right? And we're going to try to do something unique at this program. And so that's a big one for me in terms of just professionally. I want to. Texas and women's volleyball is a big, different challenge, unique challenge. So, how do we feel about taking that on? And then, lastly, would be sort of like wherever we go, is that somewhere that's philosophically aligned with how we want to treat people, how we want to compete? Can it attract the kids and athletes that we want to attract? And are the people that would be around us people that we want to be around? And then is it a place that we want to spend time together? Going from Malibu to Austin is, those are two pretty high standards. So I don't know, there's not too many places in the country that I would want to spend more time in. So I'm not saying that we would never move, but those are two pretty good spots. So I'll have a combination of all those factors, and it's not like one of them would, they're not, the scales, aren't tipped one way or another.
Great answer. And I like how Jordan just like, whoop, you can have the baton back right there. But this was actually for both of you. And I know that you guys are coming up on your first year anniversary, if I'm correct, in August. But I wanted to ask this question. I thought it was interesting because especially being as prominent names as both of you are in the game, they'd ask any advice for couples working together and handling the dynamics of the work/home environment without that natural break from one another. But you guys have been apart quite a bit during the first year. So I'm like, that's pretty interesting. But I mean, it is a challenge in itself. I mean, not everyone gets to go to an Olympics in Tokyo, and not everyone is a D1 coach who's in a highly prominent program. So I'm curious as how you guys would approach that. And so this question can also be answered for our little fan there. So Jordan, you want to take a stab?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like you said, we really haven't been in the same place yet. I do think that is something that we're going to have to constantly be aware of, and something that is going to be on our mind of how can we make this the best situation, not just for us, but for the players as well. And I think, Rob, are you frozen there? Maybe, I don't know. Looks like it.
Nah, just keep going. I can hear you.
All right.
We'll have a good conversation.
Okay. Yeah, we're sure.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so I just think it's just keeping it at the forefront of our mind.
How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I think Jordan hit on a good psychological piece, right? And just awareness. Mindfulness is a big topic nowadays, specifically in sport, and it just awareness of what's going around you and how you're reacting to it. So awareness is big. I do think for us that we don't have any great advice for it because we haven't actually been in the same spot. So during COVID, we were around each other a lot, and it was great in terms of we were able to talk about a lot of things. We got on a few Zooms with some good friends and talked volleyball, and I think we had a good time doing that. Volleyball has been a common language, and I think what what people need to understand when we say like we're fans of volleyball or we love volleyball, it's not really that, like, I wouldn't even say it's we love volleyball, right? Volleyball for us, or at least for me, is it's a little bit of psychology, a lot of psychology. It's a little bit of tactics. It's how do we deal with people? It's group dynamics. It's like, you know, this, how do we get these people to work together, team cohesion. It's science, right? So you have the science of how people learn skill. It's physics, right? Like our sport is very rooted in just physics and how do you apply force and power. And so it's all of these different things. And then as a coach, you know, you have the leadership aspect, right? And just what makes great leaders. And so there's all these different things that we talk about, and probably people would term it as, oh, you just talk volleyball, but it's not that we're talking volleyball. It's we're just talking about things that I think can be applied to anything in life, which is really just life conversations. And yeah, probably not dissimilar than a lot of other people have in their household in terms of when they come home from work and they're invested in it, right? Like that's the other thing is Jordan is passionate about what she does. She's invested in what she does and she goes all in on what she does. I would be the same way. And some people might say that at times it's unhealthy because we could become obsessive about it, but you just want what's best for the people that you're working with because you care for them and you want to feel like you're doing right by them. So yeah, that I just think the important piece for us that would be, you know, if something came up in our personal lives, that doesn't bleed into work relationships or the kids or the team. But I think that's, again, that's something that is in every profession, right? Like if I go into the office and I'm, you know, in a different profession, I don't want to take it out on my coworkers because I'm having a bad time at home, right? Or because Spud kept me up all night, you know, because he wanted to play with his toy or whatever it is. So I think it really applies to anything.
Yeah. I'm going to throw this question your way. I know that Jordan, you haven't been part of the recruiting process, but we'll be exposed to it pretty quickly here. But what is the biggest piece of advice for a young player who hasn't entered the recruiting process yet? You know, what can they do to maximize their game now and going into the future? I guess I was two. I just realized that when they put that punctuation in the wrong place. So let's just go with that first half of that. What is the biggest advice for a young player entering the recruiting process? How about that?
David, go ahead.
No, but he said Jordan.
No, he didn't say anything. No.
I said take a step first. I'm sure Dave has got something to say too, because it's your first year in the process.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know, I think that oftentimes, you know, I think that coaches, athletes think coaches want to look at talent first, right? And they do, right? Like if you are a talented person, that's probably what catches their eye initially. But I think what athletes need to remember is like all these intangibles that are also go into it, you know, like how are you treating your parents? How are you treating your teammates? All those things encompassing kind of lead to, you know, maybe a program going after a certain athlete, or maybe a program not going about a certain athlete because of all those things around surrounding that athlete. And so I think just when you're thinking about, all right, I got to put out my best self, it's like, all right, well, what is my best self? Yes, it's like showing my talent, but also how can I be, you know, caring about others, or, you know, just showing that I'm a selfless person and that I want the team to be successful. And that's just awareness. And, you know, and then also like having, you know, maybe conversations with your coach, like on how that looks and can be portrayed to coaches that are recruiting. So, but I also think too, like, don't put so much pressure on yourself. You know, I think that, you know, as young athletes, they feel like they have to like be this perfect thing, and that, you know, everybody's not perfect, you know, like it's, you know, everybody has flaws and it's okay. And to kind of lean into that and to be okay in that space. So that would be my 2 cents.
Oh, it's a great piece of wisdom though, for sure. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I wouldn't say anything differently. So I think that's good. The only thing I would piggyback is just whether it's recruiting or being an athlete, right? Or just as you're growing up, you got to remember that everybody's path is different. and everybody has their own story and their own narrative, and there's no one way to get somewhere in life or whatever your goals are. There's not just one direct path, and it's going to be ugly and it's going to be messy and it's not always going to go according to plan. But I would say just, paint your own picture, write your own story, right? And whatever that is, and have a clear goal of what you want to accomplish, and then get after it, right? And what does that look like every day? So that would be my one thing.
Good stuff. This one's for Jordan only. Sorry, Dave.
Only for you, Jordan.
It
You
was
heard that. Only for you.
Specific on the my direct messages on Instagram, but I know it'd be an exciting opportunity and a special challenge. But how emotional would it be if Texas faced Nebraska in a national championship match this coming season?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually gotten that question quite a bit, and I think it would be, from a volleyball fan, like take myself out of it and just observing. Like, I mean, if you talk about two of the top programs like in the United States, like seeing that like as a, two very talented teams going at it, I think it would be fantastic. And I obviously like born and raised Nebraska, like obviously proud alum, but I think I've been removed from the game for some time, and so I think coming back, I have this like openness, and I think where my mind and focus is going to is just like these young student athletes, regardless of what, right, like program they decide to go to, right? Like ultimately, now being a part of the national team, it's how can we get our players to be the best internationally if that's what they choose to do, and how can we have a great impact on wherever they are and what program that is, can that be the focus? And I think maybe as I get more intertwined, in the NCAA and, the competitive side will probably come out more as far as, we don't like them because of so-and-so or whatever, so I think it's, but as of right now, the perspective or the lens that I see it from is like, all these young student athletes are in like the best time of their lives. And it's such a time to mold and figure out who they are and what they want to be. And, I just want them to have the best experience wherever they are and just really dive into what they want next. And if they want to play internationally, how can we make our national team be as dominant as it should be, right? Like we should be dominating, just based off of depth of talent and just overall experience. So I think that's where a lot of my focus goes. And I think, but of course, going back to the general question, I think a Texas-Nebraska final would be fantastic. And I'm excited to see what could happen.
Oh, well, in your response, it actually triggered another question that was asked, and I'd love for both of you to take a stab at it, being that Dave, you were an assistant on the women's national team, but what are your thoughts on USA's performance in VNL this season? Because I know there was high expectations, but they had an early exit in the finals round. So who's feeling like they've got it? I'm looking at your faces, body language, and I'm not sure where to go here on this one.
David,
Dave, you want to take a stab?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab. It obviously means that Karch and his staff forgot how to coach since Tokyo ended 4 months ago or however long, right? Like that's obviously no.
No,
I think it's, I think, well, you got to give credit to Serbia, right? Serbia played some good volleyball. I watched the match. Serbia played some really good volleyball. And then for the US, I mean, so Jordan knows this, right? They won the gold medal, but the margins are wafer thin, right? Like when you're playing the best teams in the world, we could have easily won the gold medal in 2016 as well. But, in the fifth set, it went the other way, 15-13, where if it goes our way, maybe the US is 2-time gold medalist. So you're playing elite teams, like the margins are thin, matches like that can go either way. The pieces that Karch is integrating into his team, obviously they lost significant pieces from the previous year, but the talent that they have is good, and they're learning, and they have to go through those phases and those growth phases as athletes as well. And those are all good signs, and those are all part of the maturation process. For me as a coach, and I'm sure Karch is looking at it the same way, like how did the athletes respond when it didn't go their way, either in the match or after the match, right? Because that's going to be telling of their success long term. How do they take failure and how do they respond to it? And fuel is the right word, or maybe not the right word, because I think when you use it as like this motivation, it's only lasting for so long. But just what's the learning process, and can we incorporate that in learning process, and can we get better, and can we keep the end in mind? So yeah, it's that's a long-winded way of saying like other teams play good volleyball, and you got to acknowledge that. Doesn't mean the U.S. isn't playing good volleyball, and the U.S. is going to keep integrating some pieces that maybe weren't out there on the floor before, and going to keep getting better. So it'll be fun to see what they do at World Champs, and then they'll learn some stuff there, and they'll break it all down and keep that process going.
Yep. How about you, Jordan? Were you watching closely?
Yeah, I really, life has been a little crazy, so I haven't probably watched as much as I would have liked. But in general, it's cool to see, them trying to navigate this space, right? They have new pieces, and like, how do they form? But in general, like, all great people. And I know they'll use this as a learning lesson, and, be able to kind of reframe how they want to be and want to approach things. So I think with anything in life, whether it's volleyball or just in general, right? Like, there's always a lesson to come out of it. And I know that they'll use this as a good learning tool, and to be able to kind of reframe how they want to approach, leading into World Champs and then beyond, right? Like through the quad. And so I'm excited for them. I think it's a great opportunity. And the game was close, right? It was like fifth set, right? Like, so I think, again, like, there's always things, well, we could, they were so close. So at the end of the day, it's like, it is what it is. And, you learn from it. And knowing Karch, like, he's gonna do a great job of leading and being able to get the team where it needs to be prepped and ready for World Champs.
Yep. Well, I feel like I need to throw in a Big Ten question in there. And I know that you're both relatively new. Well, at least from a coaching.
Well, I went to UCLA, so now I'm a Big Ten. I'm Big Ten too.
Oh,
right? Like, that's the deal. We're both Big Ten, Jordan. Here we go.
That's the topic of another podcast, Dave. But any thoughts on how the Big Ten volleyball teams can impact all of women's volleyball? And then while you're at it, any sleeper teams this upcoming season that are catching your eyes at this time of the year? And give you a second to think about that, because I can see the gears turning physically here. So,
David, go ahead.
Smart move by Jordan. She just diverts all these things. I haven't watched. I mean, I haven't seen anybody. Like, the only things I've seen are the teams last year. So I don't know. Usually, like at Pepperdine, I would know who the good teams are going to be by recruiting classes over the years, right? Like, oh, I know that this school has these pieces in their gym, or Rob, when we were talking about Long Beach last year, right, to start the year, I was saying, hey, this Bulgarian guy, we saw him over the summer, he's pretty good, guys, like, just keep an eye on him, he's pretty darn good. So usually you would see that. I didn't see any of those kids in the recruiting process, because I just got here, and girls 18s were over, right? They do it earlier for USA Volleyball or AUs or wherever they go. It's done. So I didn't see those girls playing. So I couldn't predict really. I would only know on who returns people from last year's teams, because that's what the video I've watched. But so I can't tell you any sleepers or anything like that, other than probably what the volleyball fans already know.
Yeah. Anything to add, Jordan? I know that's a very limited experience. Nope. Okay. Well, then I'm going to take the opportunity to share a story, because I had met Jordan at one of the first USA events, one of the hotel dining halls at breakfast or lunch or something. And I was just so blown away at how friendly and outgoing you were as an athlete that I'd seen on the national stage. But it's really cool because I am currently in Tulsa, Oklahoma for the Norseca Pan American Cup with a U19 team. And I was sitting at breakfast yesterday thinking, well, I have this interview with both Dave and Jordan, and this is the same scenario in which I met Jordan at. And seeing these girls, how shy and they're sweet and everything, but gosh, they were. It just brought back memories of meeting you for the first time, being at in this huge meal room where all these international teams are at. But you can see the talent coming up, and Dave and I have been watching some of the all the matches for me, David, some of them because he's working too. So, but the U.S. has got a deep talent pool and a lot of power coming into the USA program. So. But I love seeing how you text and say, well, be sure to tell him I said hello. I'll be sure to do it this morning. They kind of took off all the group, the ladies all travel in a group. So, but I'll be sure to hit that up. But with that, it's just cool seeing the development of these girls coming into the USA program and the talent pool that's been coming in. I feel like the impact of women's volleyball or the growth of women's volleyball and the talent that's there has started in those conferences that you guys are now coaching in. There's such a huge talent base, and you guys are bringing out the best in them. So it doesn't shock me that both of you are part of another huge program in Texas. Now, Dave, a bias toward you. I wanted you to stay in the men's game. Not going to lie.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But such a great story for you guys to be a part of Texas. And I know that we've run. Go ahead,
Rob. I got to say, we ran this boys camp at Texas a few days ago. I don't know when this will air, but we ran this a few days ago. There's no plan to add men's volleyball at Texas. I'm just throwing that out there right now. I had gotten a lot of messages, hey, is this starting or whatever? But because Jarrett, Eric, and myself all have roots in men's volleyball, like I think we're committed to trying to grow it, and you talked about me leaving men's volleyball, but there's a lot of people in the game of volleyball. I'm just going to join them all together. The game of volleyball that have their roots as players or coaches on the men's side that are really invested in growing it. And, Craig Skinner at Kentucky is one of them. The whole Shondell family, like people don't realize just how invested those people are. It may not be, out on the forefront where their name is out there in bright lights, but these people are doing a lot of hard work to try to keep the game overall growing. So I think at Texas, we also feel that responsibility to keep it going and grow it. And the game has given us a lot, similar as it's given Jordan a lot. And Rob, you get to be at these events. I'm going to group you in it too. But so I see that going on. So I just had to mention that as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to end on this one. That way we can clear the air. I was asked to ask this question of Dave, and then we'll give Jordan the opportunity to retort or respond. But word through the grapevine is when Dave was an assistant on the USA women's national team, that Jordan was challenging the coach. So I wanted you to comment on that, Dave.
Well, to be fair, she could probably argue that I was probably tough to play for. So that could be like the same way of saying that. But I wouldn't say tough to coach. I think we didn't see things eye to eye. And I think part of it was I didn't know her as an athlete. I didn't know anybody really in that gym as an athlete. And it just took some time to get to know each other, get to know how she saw things, how, just sort of, obviously she had been playing for a while at a high level already, just sort of where her mindset was. And then from my standpoint, how I was seeing it. And I saw this person that was a really good volleyball player that could impact others in such a strong way, hopefully for the positive. And how could that manifest itself? So I was approaching it from that regard in terms of effort, energy, like just competitiveness. She never lacked that ever, which is something that you love in your athletes as a coach. But I guess the way as I think about it now would be, I wanted her to give more to others because I saw the impact that she could have. And maybe, yeah, I'll let her articulate that, or sort of how she saw that. Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
I mean,
Wow.
yeah. No, I think early on in this conversation, I talked about, I ask a lot of questions. And so sometimes how those questions are perceived maybe are come across in a manner of that it's, questioning intention or questioning, just overall. I don't know if that even makes sense, but I think sometimes I was always looking for something or why we were doing it, because I wanted to be able to fully understand so then I can get to the answer quicker. And I think oftentimes how I did that and then maybe how my actions were being perceived by others was taken in a manner that was never my intention, right? Like my intention was always I want the best for the team, and the team before me, and I know that I couldn't do alone. I was just trying to survive and just be there, and how can I add value? And so I think for example, one comment he pointed out to me, and it was very well understood. Like I would get water and I would just kind of sit off by myself. I mean, Fluka was next to me, but I was kind of more towards the end versus hey, the team is kind of over here, but it wasn't because I wanted to be far from them. That's just where I was placed. But the perception of maybe what that was taking from other players, how does that, being perceived by others? And so just that awareness piece and things that I just maybe wouldn't have even acknowledged, or not maybe even acknowledged, noticed, because I just wouldn't think about those kind of things. So I think that he's brought up a lot of great points of how I can be better and how I can get my intention across better, because that's always been where my heart has been. And I think that I've been able to be on a lot of successful teams, and it's not because of me, right? It's because of all encompassing and being a sum, a piece of the sum, and so I think it's just being able to kind of dive into that and just more awareness on how my actions can really impact those around me.
Wow.
Rob, I mean, that's gold right there, I think, for athletes and coaches. But the biggest one, as I thought back to it too, specifically with Jordan, was anytime you have an athlete, they can carry a load for you, right? And it's coaching too. You want to catch your teammates or athletes doing things correctly or right, and then celebrate that, right? As a teammate, I want to celebrate my teammates doing things well, right? So the easy one is I kill an overpass, right? The first thing I want to do is I want to turn around and acknowledge the server, right? Hey, that was a great serve, nice job. Nothing drives me more nuts than the athlete that turns around to the stands and is flexing, and you're just it was right on the net. You were supposed to kill it. The guy that just did all the work for you was there. Or, you get a great out of system set, somebody runs it down and gets up to the net, and the athlete kills it and then just does a 360 and runs around the gym. And it's yeah, you're the guy that set the ball is on the ground next to the barrier, but you're going to run around in circles. And just the idea that we're all working on something, right? And I think great teams understand that and start pulling for each other. And so if me and Jordan are out there competing, and even if we're trying to get the same spot, we're both outside hitters and we both want to play, I'm pulling for Jordan to be her best, because I want to measure my best against Jordan's best. And it's not really against, I just know that, hey, if Jordan's at her best, then my practice level is going to go up and I'm going to get better. And at the end of the day, we're both on the same team and we're both going to contribute to the same goal, and we're both going to bring different aspects. And, playing is completely outside of our control. It's going to be whoever coach wants out there with whatever he values. And if he's made that clear, awesome. If he hasn't, then, that's outside of our control as well. So I think it's that idea of I want the level of my teammates to be good, and I want my level to be good. And it's one thing to hold myself to a high standard. I think everybody in the USA gym probably holds themselves to a high standard. It's, can I hold myself to a high standard and inspire my teammates to also be great? And if I can do that, that's when I become elite. So I think Jordan made that transition. It wasn't because of me. It wasn't because of any of the coaches. I think she's a smart competitor that figured that out on her own. And the elite athletes are sensitive to what works. And when it works, they stick with it and they hone in on it. I think she's done that over her career.
Wow. Well, I know that we've gone really long, but such golden nuggets from both of you.
There you go.
Guys, it's pretty apparent you are very complimentary to each other. And I think it's, I don't say this to be a joke or anything, but it's seriously like a volley couple in the game, and Texas is only going to benefit. But not only Texas, I think the entire game of volleyball in the US will be affected by what you're going to be doing here in the upcoming months and years to come. So Dave, Jordan, I can't even thank you enough for always being willing to jump on a video call with me and do interviews and podcasts and so forth, but I cannot thank you enough. So David Hunt, Jordan Larson, it's from every part of the volleyball world. We'll just say that because you guys have your fingers in on everything. So thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Rob.